संस्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणीं अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। पवित्रं चरितं यस्याः पवित्रं जीवनं तथा पवित्रतास्वरूपिण्यै तस्यै कुर्मो नमो नमः। नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे। ओम सर्वमंगलमांगल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। So from past 2 days it's raining. It's a cyclone effect. So I think more people on online rather than offline. Of course, Shivanalli is much colder than Bangalore. After coming here, I found it's much warmer here. You don't need a sweater or a cap, etc. Of course, there also I won't use. So comparatively, Shivanalli is much colder due to our trees and forest, etc. But here, Bangalore is much warmer. So we were into the chapter, each is great in his own place, Karma Yoga, 5th chapter of Swami Vivekananda. Already I gave a bit of understanding in the last chapter regarding the sentence, the inborn love for freedom. Of course, in between I will be again quoting the same sentence because it has got a lot of value, the inborn love for freedom. Until unless you seriously take this karma as yoga, I think it takes time for us to understand the value of that statement. So to know the real value, you have to contemplate a lot on the inborn love for freedom. So this chapter Swamiji began with the imbalances with respect to sattva, rajas and tamas, which creates, due to that imbalances, we see this creation. So, we can't expect any equality with respect to manifestation. And Swamiji explained the same idea with morality and duty, and then Swamiji said, the important thing is to know that there are gradations of duty and of morality, that the duty of one state of life in one set of circumstances will not and cannot be that of another. So there are gradations with regarding to the idea of duty and morality and of morality. So here also you have to apply the same law. What law? There are gradations with respect to the application of the idea, the inborn love for freedom. As there are gradations for morality and duty, there are gradations for application of inborn love for freedom. To analyze, we'll give one example for you. Last week, that is last Friday and Saturday, we had been to Nagarhole. There are almost 600 hamlets, most of them staying inside the forest. Few are staying outside in the fringes of the forest, but majority are staying there. They have given the permissions to the tribals, permission to stay inside the forest so that they can protect the environment. So, we wanted to do some winter relief. We went with 2 loads of warm clothings, approximately in 2 days, because Sunday I had to come for the lecture. We went in the early morning, Friday, 5 o'clock I left. Directly I went to Nagarhole, stayed in the forest only with a tent, because you don't have time to search for places, and in the forest you don't get places also. And next day morning we continued, and we could complete at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and we started at 4, and I was in Shivanalli at 8:30. So 2 days with 2 loads of all winter clothing. When we are seeing those people, what is the first idea that comes to the mind? They're economically, in one respect, may not be in full respect at least, and even with respect to education also. They have a small tin shed school. You cannot even imagine that it's the school. Inside the forest, if you go, Jain Kurba, tribal community. Majority, in Nagarhole, majority are Jain Kurbas. So if you see that a small school with a tin shed, LKG to 10th standard, there will be hardly 10 to 15 students. Of course, they may not be having the idea of coming to school or the hankering or passion for knowledge with respect to academics. So, seeing them, the first idea is, you will have, in one sense, if any person who has got a little heart will feel for them, definitely. But that feeling at the first instance is not based on inborn love for freedom. So I gave an hint. Analyze every idea that you do, every act that you do with the idea of inborn love for freedom. Then you will understand the difference and you will understand the stage that we are in to pursue Karma Yoga. So, in one sense, it's a natural instinct. Seeing their helplessness, you feel like helping them. Is it not? So, it's not inborn love for freedom which prompt me to do relief. No. At the first instance, it's their helplessness at the outset which made me to work for them. Is it not? So, it's not inborn love for freedom. And but if you extend it a bit, if you extend that example a bit further, what prompted? We feel that they should be educated still more and they should have still more economic freedom, or they should proceed with respect to prosperity in all fields. We feel that. Why do you feel? Because at present you are free of that and you expect the same freedom in that. The basis is inborn love for freedom. So, unless we give thought and idea and time, none of the ideas gets digested. We remain even after 50 years in the same plane. Adhikara will be the same. Don't misunderstand me, it's a fact. Even while quoting that, I gave an example of a devotee who came and said to me that, Swamiji, I am reading Brahma Sutra. Then I told him that, oh dear devotee, he first develop the habit of doing at least 50,000 japa per day, then we will do Brahma Sutra. And one devotee complained, rather in a tone of complaint. That devotee told me, Swamiji, mother has told 15 to 20, you are too high, you are asking 50. You should not. I did not tell you in terms of number. What I meant was, have siddhi in one particular field before understanding or entering into our other field. You have to analyze our intellect, our body, our mind and our attitude. Come to a conclusion, where do we stand? And then follow the particular path with all devotion and faith and according to your instructions from the Guru. Then only reading is no problem. You want to read Advaita Vedanta? Definitely. You want to read Raja Yoga? Definitely. You want to read Kashmir Saivism? Well and do. You want to read a Tantra? Of course. You want to know about Sri Chakra? Of course. You want to know about Sri Lalita Sahasranama? Of course. But you should not deviate from your path. And to stress that point, I asked him, brother, first do at least a minimum of 50,000 japa. If you can do 50,000 per day, then you can think of all Advaita Vedanta, Brahma Sutra, etc. I will come to that point later on also, if time permits. And then now, I am in Nagarhole, I analyze that point. Whether it is inborn love, I always, whenever I travel, I always remember Swamiji's sentences that come to my mind. Some points or some message of Swamiji are deeply within, because it has inspired us so much. So, I was analyzing whether this act has led to this inborn love for freedom. I am really feeling that inborn love for freedom. At the initial stages, it is not so. So, hence I said, even as there is gradations with respect to morality and duty, there are gradations in application of inborn love for freedom. You cannot, it's the highest point that Swamiji has told. It will not come in an instant. First, practice it with that idea, and slowly it takes time to come to that standpoint of inborn, every act based on inborn love for freedom. And one more point I want to make it clear. You see Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. If you analyze, you will understand many things. We say, even Swamiji says, Sri Ramakrishna is an avatara. What do you mean by an avatara? Avatara means he is perfect in everything. He has attained perfection. Okay, Swamiji, Sri Ramakrishna has attained perfection. Okay. Then, Sri Ramakrishna has attained perfection. That does not mean world will attain perfection. Never. It is only Sri Ramakrishna who has attained perfection. Never the world. So, there are two important things for all sadhakas to understand. Many find it very difficult to understand this point. There is something called subjective, and the second point is the objective. This objective word remains the same. There is only your inborn love for freedom is totally subjective. All yogas is only subjective. Why do I am stressing this point? Because before coming to Ramakrishna Math, before taking initiation or before taking up the Karma Yoga, I was sleeping, I was eating, I was going to work. When I started reading, when I took initiation, when I started reading Karma Yoga, when I started reading Vachana Veda, I will be sleeping, I will be eating, I will be working. After 30 years, you have practiced and you have come to a state. Still, you will be eating, you will be sleeping, you will be working. The objective word never changes. So, inborn love for freedom is only a subjective attitude. The work in this world never changes. Because if you don't understand this, we cannot work in a society, and we cannot work staying inside an organization. All spiritual organization in the whole world is never perfect, cannot be perfect. Any spiritual organization in the whole world, even if Swamiji has started this organization, it cannot be perfect. He is Shiva. He is Shiva. This organization cannot become Shiva. So, always yoga means it's always subjective. Somebody that day after my class, they told me, the devotee, Swamiji, whatever karma yoga that we are hearing, it's even difficult to practice at home itself. Forget about society. Difficult to practice at home. Why do you say that it's difficult to practice at home? Because you are expecting all the members of the family to follow. It can never be possible. That's why you have to understand, yoga means it's subjective. There is no objective here. Sri Ramakrishna came, the word remains the same. It is perfection only with respect to the ideal called Sri Ramakrishna. And those who want to try that ideal, they lead to perfection. But there remains as an objective word, can never be perfect. Even Ramakrishna Mission and any mission on this earth, which is a spiritual organization, cannot be perfect. Perfection means laya. Imperfection is always creation. When there is a created thing, it will live. There will be a proportion. Means maximum amount of goodness, less amount of evil. In that sense, you can say. There will be, in any spiritual organization, there will be maximum amount of goodness. But you cannot remove evil. No way. So how do you stay and work? You will see, you can complain, you can say that devotee is correct, that Swami has done. No. With respect to work and this world, you have to work it in the way. Suppose you are being an in charge, a secretary of an institution. You should know how this institution work, because no spirituality will work. It is only the work will work. Subjective attitude you can change, but you cannot change the objective reality of this world. You being a Swami, you have to file GST, you have to handle money, you have to be a manager, you have to handle cash, you have to handle people. They have not come to realize God. You have come to realize God. It's only subjective. Because seeing this cloth, they may do pranam, but they will not accept whatever you say. No, it's never possible in any institution. They may not open their mouth because some Swami will be very adamant, or they will be very expressive. They will be very commanding. Seeing such, they will keep quiet, but they will not accept. That's the reality of the world. But yoga means it's always subjective. There is no, this word and objectivity, you have to understand. When we say it is difficult to practice in the world, what do you mean? We expect everybody to follow karma yoga, which is never possible. We will be a chartered accountant, we have to work in the company, you have to see how you can make a profit, how you adjust the accounts, it will be there. You cannot avoid it in the world. What you can best possible way practice, it's a subjective awareness that whatever I am doing, it's an inborn love for freedom, nothing else. You cannot change any objectivity. So, many people say it is difficult to practice ethics in this Kali Yuga, difficult to practice dharma. Why? You expect majority to follow. Expectation is good, but it's not practical. So, yoga means, any yoga, bhakti, gnana, karma, raja. Yoga means it's always subjective. It is you and God. No connection with this world. When you come to world, you have to all have cleverness, all intellect. Otherwise, they will fool you. They will not see. Suppose you invest in a mutual fund. They will not see it's Ramakrishna Mission or it's a Swami who has invested. We will give maximum profit. No, they are not there to give you profit. They are there to make money. You should know where to invest, not to invest. So this world will work like that only. There, your karma yoga theory will not work. Where does it work? It's always subjective. Please understand this point. Love for what do you mean by inborn love for freedom? The attitude with which I do karma is based on subjective attitude. So always we have to base. Then when you are established in that point, the less we expect from the society, the less we are disturbed. So that's why whenever I see that point, when Swamiji made the karma yogi does not require any external motive except the inborn love for freedom. It struck me so well that what a point Swamiji is making. It's so true. We are finding it to struggle to adjust with this world, which cannot be. Then I understood, oh, you cannot adjust with this world. Totally subjective. Objective, it goes on, let it go on. That's where the idea of witness, where does it come? Self-surrender. All based, it's all subjective. Nobody will come. And suppose a young man, after graduation, will join any spiritual organization. As a Swami, let us say. Before joining, he was sleeping, eating, working. After joining also, he will sleep, work and eat. Is it not? What changes had made in the objective world? Has he left sleep altogether? Has he left eating altogether? Has he left work altogether? Sitting in Himalayas also, he will be thinking of many things. No. Objective world remains the same. Until unless you transcend, realize the Atman. So, that's why Swamiji, he is so wonderfully made that statement. Such a wonderful statement. Karma yogi does not require any external motive except the inborn love for freedom. Such a wonderful, I like it so much. Even if you allow me for 1 hour, I can extend, but I will stop. If I get a mood, I can extend that idea. Anyhow, so there are gradations, Swamiji said. To illustrate, he took the point of non-resistance is the highest moral motive, or the highest moral ideal. Which is the highest moral ideal? Non-resistance is the highest moral ideal. Then Swamiji said, if you try to practice that highest ideal of non-resistance, then wicked people will take possession of this world. So, in the initial stages, it's first resistance. Then, through that strength, you will get non-resistance. Then Swamiji gave the example, in this aspect, gave the example of Sri Krishna telling Arjuna to fight. Then Swamiji said, many have criticized, saying that how can a god instigate a person to fight? Because he is at a level of weakness. He is not at a level of non-resistance. He is at a level of resistance, so he has to resist by fighting the war, by fighting. Then he will attain a place of non-resistance. There is in DVG Kagga. Palgunanu sanyasi Subhadrayu sulidaduva tanaka. Palgunanu sanyasi Subhadrayu sulidaduva tanaka. This Palguna means Arjuna. Arjuna's one more name is Palguna. So, how long Arjuna will be Palguna? Subhadra comes. Palgunanu sanyasi Subhadra sulidaduva tanaka. He is at a level of resistance. No, he cannot speak of non-resistance. No. So, Krishna exhorted him to stand up and fight. That's a night Kagga. I could not quote full because it's the English section. Just quoted the last 2 lines. Palgunanu sanyasi Subhadra sulidaduva tanaka. You read that, it's a wonderful Kagga by DVG. So, this non-resistance is a higher state. To attain that, at this level you have to resist everything. And Swamiji gives one more link for this non-resistance. What do you really mean by non-resistance? Swamiji gives this meaning. What do you mean by non-resistance? Suppose we say, Buddha will practice non-resistance, or Swamiji, or Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. What do you mean by non-resistance? Suppose somebody will come and beat him, somebody will abuse him. This word may criticize a Buddha or a Swamiji or a Paramahamsa. They will not resist, they will accept everything. So if you say they accept everything, there is non-resistance. What do you mean by that? Why do they accept? Because Swamiji says they have ideal love, means they are manifesting the divine love. They have divine love towards us. Hence, they will never resist. So, what non-resistance is always connected with the pure love, the ideal love. See, all these connections you will get only in Karma Yoga of Swamiji. Krishna had less time because he wanted to make this Arjuna to fight a war. He had less time, so he cannot explain every word. Swamiji knew that we fools will be there after 150 years who don't know much. So they need to be made understandable. So what he did, he gave a lectures in America so that Indian people will sit and hear. Otherwise they will not hear. So he had 8 lectures to speak on Karma Yoga. Such a wonderful connection. So Swamiji says, how does non-resistance? It is through pure love, divine love that manifests due to perfection. Because Swamiji earlier also gave that message, love shines in freedom alone. Love shines in freedom alone. One who is free can really love. So Buddha has attained nirvana, he is fully free. So he can love the whole world. Now he is at a state of non-resistance. And Even this example comes in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna also, and Swamiji also has quoted in his complete works. There is one Swami or a sannyasi or a sadhaka who was beaten due to communal rights. He was beaten, and some other disciples brought him to the ashrama. They were nursing him, and he had become unconscious, lost consciousness. He was brought to consciousness after his opening eyes. They fed him with milk, and they asked, "Who beat you? Who has beaten you?" Then that Swami told, "The man who is helping me to drink the milk, he is the same man who has beaten me." He is seeing the sameness. Means that is the state of non-resistance. How he has attained? It's a pure love. Swamiji says non-resistance and ideal love. When we speak of this non-resistance and ideal love, Swamiji uses the word ideal love. What do you mean by ideal love? It's divine love or the pure love. No material tinge in it. Only the pure consciousness, the awareness that shines through that act of loving. So, that is the meaning of non-resistance. Until you attain that state, go on resisting. Because somebody scolds me, definitely I may not react, but still deep within it will be there for that scar will be there for 3 days, 4 days. Somebody can quote even year. Can go in 1965, Ramakrishna, in 10 in front of Ramakrishna Bull Temple Road, that man scolded these words. They can remember to any extent. So, when you are at that stage, it's better you react. Better react and wash away your unhappiness and all those things and be free. Then come to a state, till then go on reacting. Because he will also give, then you will understand, your ego will be pressed. That's why Swamiji says, non-resistance means it's ideal love. Now, I concluded with this statement. Before reaching this highest ideal, man's duty is to resist evil. Let him work, let him fight, let him strike straight from the shoulder. Then only, when he has gained the power to resist, will non-resistance be a virtue. This I read, these sentences I read. But I have one question for you. You try to find an answer. I will put the question. You think of an answer. I will give this answer in the next lecture, but not today. But I will put these questions to you. Now, which is the ideal? Non-resistance is the highest ideal. Okay. What is the path? Swamiji says, before reaching this ideal, man's duty is to resist evil. Let him work, let him fight, let him strike. So what do you mean by fight, strike? Means resisting. So, non-resistance is the highest ideal. The path is resistance. Is it not? Let him fight, let him strike means what? You are resisting to reach non-resistance. Now my question, how can resistance lead to non-resistance? How can resistance, by fighting, by arguing, by proposing, by striking, by resisting, our ideal is non-resistance. You have to, suppose you want bhakti. What do you mean? You start loving. Is it not? Small acts of love further leads to divine acts of love. Small acts of non-resistance is logically, my Purvapaksha, I am putting you Purvapaksha. You have to find the Uttarapaksha, Siddhanta. Small acts of non-resistance, let us practice, which will lead to highest ideal of non-resistance. But Swamiji says, you resist. Through that you will attain non-resistance. My question, how can resistance lead to non-resistance? It's a physics question actually. Laws of motions, etc. You can apply here. Sarvapriyanji was quoting one example. How can irresistible force move immovable object? Absolute immovable, static immovable object. How can an irresistible force move an immovable object was the question of I forgot the scientist. If anybody, he wanted to marry a girl, so he was a famous physicist. So he asked this question to the lady. If she answers, then he will marry her. Nobody could answer. And one lady, she answered, that very state is impossible. Either there should be immovable object or irresistible force. When there is an irresistible force, there cannot be immovable object. When there is an immovable object, there cannot be irresistible force. It's a contradiction in terms. So in the same way, my question is, how can the act of resistance will lead to act of non-resistance? You think it. Next time I will give you solution. Now I will continue. Then Swamiji gave the one example that a brute and came and asked us, so what is the way to realize God? Swamiji said, can you lie? Can you tell a lie? That was the final illustration that we read. Now continuing today, inactivity, karmanyavadikaste, that he is explaining, should be avoided in all means. So, inactivity should be avoided. So, you should have activity. When you say activity, Swamiji says, activity means resistance. Inactivity is non-resistance. Activity means, what do you mean by activity? It's resistance. I think such a wonderful explanation. We need some time to understand and read. First we have to read. Then we have to. So, commonly speaking or practically speaking, if somebody knows, somebody in the sense of all sadhakas, knows that non-resistance is the highest ideal, then he will pretend to become non-resistance. He will have activity deep within, but he knows that non-resistance is the highest ideal. So if he feels that the eyes of the world are on him, what he will do? He will pretend to be non-resistant, having the idea of activity. That's why Swamiji says, avoid that. So he gives the example of Arjuna. Says, he plunge into the world, and then after a time, when you have suffered and enjoyed all that is in it, will renunciation come, then will calmness come. Plunge into it. So, how do you gain non-activity? Through activity, plunge into it. You plunge deep into it. Then you will get lot of experiences which will make you calm. Plunge deep. So many people I find, even including me, not that I am out of this world, I am inside the world only. Whenever there is much activity, suppose somebody is more of contemplative, he is more of intellectual outlook, more of a reading habit, and he is a voracious reader, always he tries to avoid work, which I have seen, my personal experience. But the other side, which I also did in the initial stages, then I found that's not the right attitude. Being in a Sangha, what should be your attitude? For that I will give an example. Better to give seniors example. They lead us to light. Now what is Swamiji saying is, after time when you have suffered and enjoyed all that is in it, will renunciation come, then calmness come. This Arjuna did not have. So, Krishna made him to fight. Now, giving, I remember Revered Swami Bhuteshanji Maharaj now. He was such a great scholar in scriptures. Nobody could even imagine the depth of Maharaj. He had such a great depth in scripture and knowledge. To what extent? To the extent, of course, this I also didn't know earlier. I came to know through our senior Swamis in Belurmat. One Swami told me that Revered Tapasyanji Maharaj, who was the vice president of our order who stayed in Chennai, learnt Brahma Sutra from Revered Bhuteshanji Maharaj. You know, if our order people know, Tapasyanji Maharaj himself was a great scholar. He has translated Bhagavatam. He has got Bhakti schools of Vedanta. So many scholarly books he has written. But he took classes on, he received classes on Brahma Sutra from revered Bhuteshanji Maharaj. Bhuteshanji taught him Brahma Sutra. It's not easy to teach scholars, very difficult. That too, if they follow a particular Vishishtadvaita in school, to impress them about Advaita Vedanta, it's not so easy. You should be completely established scholarly also. Then Maharaj had taught him, has taken classes on full Brahma Sutra. Then I heard one day, in front of the temple, Tapasyanji Maharaj was requesting Bhuteshanji Maharaj, Maharaj, never I have heard such a class. Nobody has taught me Brahma Sutra like what you taught. I have a strong request. What is that? Please write a book on Brahma Sutra. How to study Shankara Bhashya. Nobody taught me like what you taught me. Nobody will teach the way you teach. How to analyze, how to understand Bhashya, how to understand the sentence of Shankara Bhashya. So I have heard from you, I have received your wonderful instructions. I request you for posterity that you write a book, you publish a book on Brahma Sutra, which Maharaj never did. See, they have attained a calmness. They never expect, it's always subjective. They are never worried about this objective word. You have to understand this very important point. Though I was surprised to hear Tapasyanji Maharaj saying this, not Mangalanathanandaji, it's Tapasyanji. So we have read here, there, a bit here and bit there, but they are thoroughly established in their schools, which they have studied. So if they something, it has got a very good value. Then Maharaj was so calmly, he never, though Maharaj, I heard he requested many times, but Maharaj never wrote any book. Whatever book that are there, and you have got Narada Bhakti Sutras, Maharaj book is there, Narada Bhakti Sutra. That is the lecture Maharaj gave. That lecture was transcribed and into a book, that's all. It was not a written book, it's a lecture converted into book form, that's all. So, one more instance, then I will continue with Karma Yoga. Just for clearing our understanding. One Swami who was in Belur Mutt, before we have to stay 2 years in training center, is it not? A probationers training center, where we get time to study, mainly 80% and 20% you will have some duties and some connected things regarding Belur Mutt, because it's our headquarters. So, mainly we will have whole day, daytime is spent only in classes and studies. So, this brahmachari was supposed to go to training center tomorrow, or he was studying in training center, I think. And one day he saw revered Bhuteshanji Maharaj sitting in front of the temple, main temple. Then he went and did pranams to Maharaj, and he requested Maharaj, Maharaj, please bless me. So we get only once a chance to stay 2 years at Belur Mutt, that too in training center, mainly focused on studies. So ye please bless me so that I can study and learn, study deeply and learn the Shastras. I want to learn Shankara Bhashya, I want to learn this and that. He quoted few Upanishads and all those things. And I want to study deeply and learn. So please bless me, Maharaj. Then, if you hear this answer, you will be perplexed. Then Maharaj told, don't have the desire for learning. Even when I heard it, I could not understand it properly. Then Swami, that Swami himself explained, don't have the desire for learning. Maharaj, 2 years we are here to learn. And if you say, don't have the desire for learning, what do you mean by that, Maharaj? See, when you say you want to read Shankara Bhashya, you want to read Upanishad, you want to read Raj Yoga, you want to learn, the basic idea behind this learning is name and fame. Your mind is hankering for name and fame. For that you want to learn. Our learning, Sri Ramakrishna has told, is only for God realization, nothing else. So even when we study Karma Yoga, when we study Upanishad, we should be very much aware that I am reading is for the inborn love for which I will connect with Karma Yoga only, inborn love for freedom alone. Inborn love for freedom alone means the other word Sri Ramakrishna uses is God realization. When there is learning, this sensitive point, especially very important for a sadhaka. Many people, I cannot say, of course it will be on YouTube, etc. So many things are connected with that. They want intellectual satisfaction, that's all. For that they want high philosophical things. But is it oriented towards God realization? Many seniors, some of their, I will not quote their names, some of them still there, but they are highly intellectual, but never have written much books, but completely focused on God realization. That's what here Swamiji says. Plunge into the word, and then after a time when you have suffered and enjoy all that is in it, will renunciation come, then will calmness come. So until unless we have passed this stage of activity, never we can reach inactivity. Naishkarma Siddhi will never come. Here also, you can add that point. Until you have passed through that activity, it's impossible for you to come to the state of calmness, serenity and self-surrender. How can activity will lead to inactivity? How can resistance will lead to non-resistance? I can put one more question. How can activity will lead to inactivity? I have already hinted at. So, Swamiji says, I do not know if I have seen 20 persons in my life who are really calm and non-resisting, and I have traveled over half the world. He said, Swamiji says, I have not met not more than 20 who are really calm. So when you say you remove 20 out of millions of people, if somebody says, Swamiji, I have attained a state of inactivity, we have to say, you are not in the 20, do work. Anyhow, so these two questions you have for yourself and try to have an exact, proper answer for that. Now, Swamiji gave an introduction to each is great in his own place. This is the introduction. Here introduction ends. Now he comes to a point where he says, every man should have his own ideal. Man means you have to include the other gender also, woman. It does not mean only man. Swamiji uses a common gender. When he says man, we have to accept other gender also. So Swamiji says, he continues, every man should take up his own ideal. One's ideal is not the ideal for another. An apple should be judged with another apple, an oak tree with another oak tree, never an apple with an orange or apple with an oak tree. Swamiji explains all these things. And then he comes to Hindu system where we have Chaturashrama, Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. So we have a definite duty aligned to all these Varnashramas. And then Swamiji says, now that 4 has been converged into 2. We have only Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa, it was earlier. Now we have only Grahastha and Sannyasa, that's all. Other 2 eliminated. So now he quotes from Mahanirvana Tantra. He gives a free translation of Mahanirvana Tantra. Swamiji gives a free translation of Mahanirvana Tantra and gives, I think for 3 pages, he will explain the duties of a householder. You better read it. There are some wonderful things I wanted to read, but no time. I will conclude this chapter. So, I will take up for discussion. Again, I will take up in the next class, next month. So, you go through the points that Swamiji has told regarding the duties of an householder. There are some very wonderful points that Swamiji has hinted, translated very freely. There are very wonderful points. Now, coming to this point, Swamiji concludes with a story. You know that story, but because Swamiji is narrating that story in America, I also have to narrate it here because I have taken Karma Yoga of Swamiji. So I will narrate the story and conclude. There was one kingdom, a king naturally in that kingdom, and the king wanted to know who is greater, whether a sannyasin or a householder, who is greater. But the thing is not that he wanted only an answer. Suppose somebody comes and say, "O king, sannyasin is greater than a householder." Then the king will say, "You have to prove it." If he cannot prove it, even though he may like to become a Swami, he will make him to marry, because he could not prove his point. If a householder comes and say, householder is greater than a sannyasin, then he has to prove it. He will not ask him to take sannyasa, but he will make him to continue. So the king said, "You have to prove the point." Then nobody could do it. And after a long time, one sannyasin, any Swami coming to his kingdom, he used to ask this question. He could not get a proper, relevant answers. Finally, one day, as usual in any story, one day a sannyasin came. He asked the same question, "Who is greater?" Then sannyasin was a very matured man. Then he said, "Oh dear king, I cannot answer this question in a day or two. To get an answer for this question, you have to live with me. You have to come, leave this kingdom for few days, few months, few years. I cannot say. But you leave this kingdom, give all the responsibility, power of general power of attorney, GPA. You give GPA to your prime minister and come with me. We will wander alone and then we'll come to a conclusion." Okay, the king agreed and transferred his responsibility to the ministers, and he started walking. They went to many countries, and one day they came to a new kingdom. While they were passing on the street, they could hear the cries of a crier. Crier means in those days they used to announce the message of a king through a crier. Crier who announces the kingly messages. He is called a crier in English. Crier is not the person who cries. No, in English, crier means with the drums they will beat and then they announce the king's message. He is called a crier in English. So this crier came. There was an announcement. This Swami and the king, they both stood to hear. And on that day, the king of that respective kingdom had arranged the Swayamvara for the princess. So, Swamiji explains every bit of it here. Many times Swayamvara had happened earlier, but she could not find a right broom, and then so the Swayamvara was cancelled many times. So this time, he had extended invitations to all the kingdoms. So many princes have come. But what does this princess expect? She expects, Swamiji's words I use, handsomest prince for a wedlock. She is expecting. Then finally all the arrangement came, and this king and the Swami, Sannyasi, they came to see this Swayamvara. Of course, Swamiji narrates, because he is speaking in America, how does a Swayamvara is organized, how these things will go, how she will choose a bridegroom, etc. All those things are explained. Swamiji explains them. Then finally, when this Swayamvara was being conducted, a young Swami, Sannyasin, will enter that hall just out of curiosity. He didn't know that it was Swayamvara. He just entered. Swamiji makes a statement. Is as if though the sun came down to this hall. That was his beauty. That was his effulgence. So, she was carrying that mala on a palanquin. Seeing this young sannyasin with so much brightness on his face, she simply went and put that garland on his neck, accepting him as his husband, future husband, would be. Then that sannyasin got frustrated and said, "Nonsense." And he threw the garland and went away. Thinking that, I narrate, when I read, many things goes like that only for me, unfortunately or fortunately, what to do. Swamiji narrates so nicely. If he would have been here, he would have narrated in a much better way, because he walks here and there. Swamiji does not sit and give lecture, he walks here and there. You have to imagine, then only you will have a lot of joy reading complete verse. Anyway, it's all my personal idea. So, Swamiji says, this king thought that this sannyasin is a poor man. So he went and requested, "Oh Sannyasin, when you marry my princess, I will give half of my kingdom. After my death, you will get the whole kingdom. Please marry my princess." Then again, he put that garland on the neck of that sannyasin. Again, this sannyasin, nonsense, and he ran away. And then Swami says, she has fallen in love with that sannyasin. She cannot live without him. You cannot understand better. You people can understand. So she said, "I cannot live without him," and she ran behind him. And this king and the sannyasin who were observing all these things, this sannyasin said, "Oh dear king, let us follow them. We will get a right answer. Come." So they followed. And this sannyasin went into a forest, and this princess also followed him to the forest. So this says, because that sannyasin knew the intricacies inside the forest, he simply vanished into the forest. No trace of him. Princess didn't know. She got lost completely in the forest. And to save them, this king and our sannyasin came, and they consoled her. "Now it's already late evening. We will stay under a big tree here. And tomorrow morning we will guide you back to the kingdom." All the three, that princess, the sannyasin, and the king, they all sat under a tree. It was dark in the night. Above the tree, a bird, a wife. Swamiji says, it's all about words of Swamiji only. A bird, a wife, and three young ones. Actually, in Kannada, they translate this as Gidaga. And Swamiji has not mentioned any particular type of bird. I don't know where they use this word Gidaga. So anyhow, this bird, his wife, and three young ones were staying in a nest above the tree. And it was winter. Now, like this winter. Then this master of the house, of the nest, said, "Oh dear my wife, there are 3 guests under a tree. It's a chilling cold in the night. They don't have a fire. How shall we serve them?" It's a bird talking. So, all our ideas is to instill the idea of service, etc., through all these animals. It does not mean that animals speak. Oh, in Hinduism, birds will speak. No, it may speak, we don't know. But the thing is to convey the idea. So, this master of the nest, that he went out to a village in search of a fire, and he brought a small fire with a wooden firing small samit, what we call in Kannada, and it simply dropped at the place where these 3 people were sitting, and they added other fuel and made it very big. Then it said, the eldest bird said, "Oh dear my wife, these guests are there. They should not sleep without food. It's our duty to feed the guest. So I shall offer my body as flesh to them, and I will die." And she simply that bird plunged into the fire and died. Swamiji says, these 3 tried to avoid, but it was very fast. They could not avoid. It died due to burning. Then the wife thought, "My husband died and sacrificed himself. I should follow my wife, my husband. That's my duty as Ardhangi, and I also will sacrifice my body in the fire." And she also came and fell into the fire. So that thinking that for 3 people, 1 bird as a flesh is not enough. Then these 2 people died. And these 3 young ones, young ones, they thought, "My father and mother have sacrificed for the sake of these 3 guests. So these 2 birds also not enough as flesh as food for them. It is better we 3 sacrifice." And all the 3 plunged into the fire. All the 5 totally died. But Swamiji says, seeing their sacrifice, these 3 people could not eat. They simply left the body there. And in the morning, they left the place, came and guided that princess back to the kingdom. And the sannyasin told him, "If you want to become a householder, be like those birds who sacrifice for the sake of everything. Or if you want to become a sannyasi, be like that young sannyasin who was as if the sun came down to the earth. Be like him with full vairagya, with full renunciation. Even the princess could not tempt him. Even the king could not tempt him with the full wealth of the kingdom. If you want to become a householder, be like that bird. If you want to become a sannyasi, be like that young sannyasin. Each is great in his own place. With this I conclude. We'll continue next time because it's already time up. We'll conclude. There are a few more points to be understood. In the mind time, you have to search answer for how can activity leads to inactivity, how can resistance leads to non-resistance. That you have to find out. And next Sunday is 18th. I think morning there will be Chandika Homa. Whether there will be evening lecture, it should be, if it is there, it will be Sri Ramakrishna Lila Prasanga. If it is there, I will take, or anyhow you will get the message. I don't know whether, generally on Chandika Homa we will not conduct any lectures. But if there is any exception, and if they ask me to take the class, I will take on next Sunday, it will be Sri Ramakrishna Lila Prasanga. And we will follow with the Karma Yoga in the month of January after celebrations. Because first week will be celebration. Revered Swami Suhisanji Maharaj will be coming to give Diksha from January 6th, I think. So till January 11th he will be there. We will resume our classes from third week of January. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.